Just gonna wait for everybody to get in here for a second. We're gonna get started. In the meantime, we'll check out the food nouns auction, see how that's looking. We just had a new one start.
It's all about the Jello.
Oh yeah.
Man, we should be sponsored by Jello. We're gonna have to start messing with them the same way that those guys mess with stamps.com.
For real, we've been in so many of these Jellos so far. All right, we're gonna get started here. How's it going, everybody? Welcome. How you doing, Musashi? Seems to be having a little difficulties. How's everybody else doing? Zarg, Sheffo?
Sheffo's doing really well. Sheffo is enjoying a Bavarian Pinot Noir Rosé and getting work done this evening. It's midnight over here in Germany, and just a really wonderful, cool evening. I just saw a gentleman in the elevator coming back from Oktoberfest, and I swear looks like he had seen a ghost. I think that going to Oktoberfest is quite an emotional commitment to dive into a tent full of drinking crazy people for hours and hours and then make your way home. So it's been really something to see. There's quite a few Americans at the place where I'm staying, and they all have spectacular outfits, and yeah, it's literally an entire thing. Really fun.
Awesome.
And the beer
really
goes down like water.
I can imagine, dude. What a cool event for you to be out there for, coinciding with with East Berlin. Very awesome experience for you, you and Toshi to be having out there.
Yeah, for sure. We've been fortunate to have a good event. The event itself in Berlin was super cool, and we actually got to meet, other different Nounish people. We were meeting Nounish builders the entire time. Like we met the developer that wrote the contracts for Salvino's Nouns Vision glasses. We met Poap, hung out with him. There was another builder who was I believe he was one of the co-founders of Poap. Don't quote me on that. But yeah, there was definitely like a Nounish presence that was really quite cool. And I just ate a bunch of food the whole time.
Good. How was the food?
The food was really good. It was really nice. There's definitely like an approach towards like a little bit of like a lighter thing, I think. Like it feels like modern German food, with like a little bit of a hipster twist these days, seems to skew a little bit more vegetarian, a little bit more kind of, there was like a fusion element. There was like a gnocchi dish that had like crispy oats and things like this on it. And we were in Germany, but we're eating gnocchi, which are essentially Italian, and it was neat to see kind of like some European fusion. I really enjoyed that.
Neat. Did you find the dairy products amazing over there?
Literally, Zargs, like the dairy products are incredible. They had these donuts that they had the Ethereum logo printed on the donut, and like it had like a gorgeous vanilla cream filling, and I it was like noticeably different. I've also honestly noticed that like the beef has a really clean, pure flavor, less of that like fatty mouthfeel that we're more used to.
Right.
I've noticed that like the ketchup is like totally different tasting. The mayonnaise is phenomenal. Like it's actually noticeable. Another thing that was really nice is the French fries. They're all like fried in sunflower oil, I'm pretty sure, and it's just yeah, a cleaner flavor experience.
Yeah.
That's really cool to hear. It's
Very.
like the classic place to get, you know, a hot dog and all that, and like, to hear that the ingredients just even taste different. That's really cool.
Yeah, they banned GMOs, so they've never had that affecting everything. And they don't like super heat their dairy products. So when you come back from there, I found that all of the milk and butter here tasted burnt.
Yeah,
That's great.
definitely. One thing that I've also noticed, we took a train from Berlin to Munich, and it was stunning. And you see it when you're in the airplane as well, but all the farms are smaller. Like you don't see these massive like fields like we see in America. If you've ever driven across the country in the United States, you will literally come across fields that they don't end. You know, they are massive. You can't even see the end of them. And there's all like the different types of irrigation. I mean, I'm sure that we'll touch on that throughout the series of this show, and different styles of, you know, industrial farming and gardening across the world. But it's been very, very clear that when you look at the average countryside in Europe, the farms are noticeably smaller. The soil is noticeably darker and much thicker amounts of topsoil. It's been really telling to see essentially like regional farming, and how that it works to feed an entire continent. And anybody who tells us that we can't do that is probably, you know, motivated on the other side. And so for me, that was one of the largest ecological takeaways that I've had in my trip.
Dude, that's, you know, it's funny you mentioned that because you know, I've been just doing a whole lot of research into, you know, soil as of lately. And, you know, out here, our form of agriculture is, you know, the commercial agriculture that we practice out here in the United States, it's just ruining the land. You know, we overtill it, it turns into dirt, there's no more soil, there's nothing living in there. And, you know, people just need more and more inputs to even pull a crop that, you know, may offer $3-4 an acre, you know, whereas the next farmer that's studying into soil health and actually building their soil and always having a cover crop growing, and, you know, multiple different types of species of cover crops and all these different things. And, you know, with that, they're able to profit over $100 an acre, as opposed to the next farm struggling to make $3 or $4 an acre. So, you know, it's definitely crazy to see like how a lot of these other countries have it figured out. You know, especially over there where you're at, you know.
Yeah, it's really interesting to take a high level look at it, because, you know, our farming did not, you know, look different than that. For hundreds of years in this country, we farmed the exact same way. And then post World War II and the industrial mechanisms that were created basically essentially by the, you know, petroleum industry and the chemical industry, essentially then, you know, led into where we are now through GMO and spraying and all of the other issues that we're facing, the depletion of the
Yep.
U.S. topsoil.
Mm-hmm.
It stands to reason that like we need to fix our system. You know, it's been really refreshing to kind of see other approaches to the same exact things, food production. And I think that, you know, in America, a lot of times we don't really think about that. You know, we literally 10 years ago, there was no such thing as groceries at Walmart, you know, and now you can literally go buy groceries at Walmart, Target, and these other huge box stores. I'm not saying that there isn't some good things within that. You know, there's some of these
Yeah.
corporations are pushing organics, even though, you know, industrial organics can have their own set of issues. But it's been just really telling to take a step back from some of the big box way of living. Really quite interesting. And I think that, you know, one of the things that Food Nouns DAO and, you know, your show and other people involved, I just think that it's going to be a really important thing for us to continue to drive the message of like we don't have to resign ourselves to a failed system. We can incrementally, slowly make changes in the right direction. And as we all know, there's
Yep.
thousands, millions of people in the United States and across the world that want to make these changes, that are still living in these, you know, these weird new quote modern industrialized types of living. But unless, you know, it's kind of like in the DAO, like if you want to have a prop passed, if you want to, let's say, get funding for something, you're not going to get that unless you ask. Same thing with making ecological changes. If we don't do the work, if we don't have the conversations, no one's going to do it for us. You know, it's not going to just appear out of thin air differently one day. It actually would be quite the opposite. And so we really do have a strong responsibility to kind of implement a butterfly effect on the whole thing. And I really look forward to seeing how people go about that within our little group.
Yeah, I agree. That's a good segue into our topic today. You know, we're going to continue to touch on permaculture. From last week, we were chatting about permaculture. Got one of our guests up here, Change the Game. How you doing today, man?
Doing great. How are you doing this evening?
Awesome. Good to have you. Excited to get a little bit of a chat going.
To start that chat off, I'd like to mention localism and the power of local farms and small farms and permaculture farms. I think it's just a commentary to the power of decentralization and the fact that we need to do this in a design forward kind of thinking manner. I think you spoke very eloquently on the fact that the design is broken. The way that we do this just doesn't match with nature. And when you want to succeed, you have to imitate nature. I think there's a bit of commentary to say that, you know, you can pretty consistently, with the application of science, imagine collaborating with nature. And that's what permaculturalists and system designers do. So I would love to hear Musashi give a little bit of a chat up here, but I think that's what we're doing. I think you can really empower small communities to use DAO tools to collectively buy property, to take that property and turn it into food forests and provide an abundance, because that's also one of the tenets of permaculture is to provide abundance.
I think I
Yeah.
think you touched on an important part of it, and that's something that was actually part of the conversation maybe about a month ago or something. But you know, we will probably have to seek legal advice and stuff like that if we were trying to purchase property as a DAO. It's definitely something that has become part of the conversation. But I think at that point, if the DAO were to hold the actual property, we would be looking more like a real estate investment trust. And I don't think that's probably something that we want to do. And so within that, my thought is that maybe perhaps we go for like 20-year leases or something like that. And we find people that we can partner with on land leases, because the DAO could then essentially fund some of those, you know, elements of that without stepping into ownership. But that's just kind of my thought on that specific.
Yeah, I went to a talk at MCon, and it was by Cabin DAO. And it was all about buying with your friends. And, basically how they tackle it is, you co-buy with a squad of 2 to 3 people, maybe 4 max. And then you work it out from there. You have your tenants, and then you have your investors and all that. And then that's all like aside from the DAO. And it all almost like they share this network of houses, but like the people that buy it together essentially are like benevolent dictators of that specific property, and what they say goes. Mind you, they are all making decisions together, but like any large financial decisions, that's like what they were saying. But yeah, funny you mentioned that, Sheffo. Like it's definitely a tricky thing that a lot of different DAOs are, and a lot of different groups of friends right now are trying to work out the kinks of, how to do this.
So I think another group that you would really get some value from is talking to LexDAO. And they are essentially a DAO of lawyers. So they're part of the same kind of ecosystem that showed up at MCon. And I showed up to a similar talk for Cabin DAO, and that was exactly who I was going to mention. So I'm glad you spoke to that. The thing that it boils down to is there are lots of different kinds of legal wrappers for nonprofits or human-oriented organizations to help each other and coordinate. So, and that edge is being pushed constantly. And if you showed up at MCon, I'm sure you heard that Colorado soon will accept tax money in the form of crypto payments. So, the on-ramps and the boards and, decentralized identities and all these things are happening right under our feet, and whether or not we want it to happen or not, we're we're knee deep in all of this. I know I've been around for 2 years plus 3 years now, probably closer. But yeah, I think it's a powerful thing to bring permaculture and systems design into the forefront of how we think about building and scaling and creating culture and community.
Yeah, it's cool, because permaculture, a lot of the times, when you're starting out a new space, you're doing it with a blank property, and most of the time, when you don't think about permaculture design, you just put your house on that property wherever is the best location, the best view, the easiest access, things like that. And it's interesting to dive into the design of, designing your own, your own homestead, around the permaculture concept. And, the first thing is, the first thing that you consider is, water. Where's your water coming from? Where you're going to be putting your roads, things like that. And then one of the last things you decide after you've planned all this out is where you're going to put that house. So it's just like all about taking care of the land, and not just coming in and bulldozing it because you want this view, working with the contours of how the land lies already, and, things like that. And, just that being one of the just first great steps.
Everyone wants to put their house at the top of the mountain, even though not thinking about the fact that they have to push things uphill perpetually from that point onwards. Yeah,
Dude,
design theory is definitely important.
Yeah.
Let's be good about practicing a little permaculture here for our show, and make sure that everybody retweets the room so that we can do our little part to proliferate these wonderful conversations.
Yes, thank you, Sheffo. Yeah, everybody get that retweet out. We don't have Andrew here today, but most weeks we will be giving out seed giveaways. So retweet that space, and next week we will have potentially 2 packs of seeds to give away. Yeah, but so back to what we were saying is, that's a really good point. No one really thinks about that. Everybody wants to have their house at the top of the hill, but it takes a lot of resources to push water up and push all your materials up that hill, consistently throughout the lifetime of that property. Definitely something to take into consideration that most people don't.
Yeah, so ironically, we actually just went over the very first two principles of the 12 of permaculture, which is observe and interact with nature, which was our commentary about systems design and how we're destroying the environment with the way that we farm. And two, which is catch and store energy, which is speaking to water almost inherently. Water is life and powers practically the entire world. We owe the existence of life to the fact that it rains and a few inches of topsoil. So let's pay attention to those two things. The third thing on the list of 12 principles of permaculture is obtain a yield. So, that's what we do when we harvest. That's what we do when we eat. That's what we do when we commune with one another and greet up in these kinds of Twitter spaces and share Twitter spaces. Would we like to keep on going through a few of those, or have anyone have some commentary on the lateral or analogous DeFi or DAO space, which is how to how to obtain a yield and store energy, right? Like that's what we're all doing here through the bear market.
Most definitely, yeah. Let's touch on that a little bit. What are some of your favorite things to really bump up the yields in your gardening techniques? Through some of the agriculture or permaculture concepts.
So I think the easiest one for people to understand is stacking functions and obtaining yields through complex systems that support one another. A very simple one is the Three Sisters example, which is corn, squash, and beans. So the combination of those three different ecosystems and those different kinds of providers is the squash will cover the ground and prevent soil erosion. The corn has deep roots and strong roots that hold the soil together. And beans are a climbing plant, so they take up whatever lateral space on the corn that you leave, when you plant it sparsely. And you get a stacking of functions there that is so much better than a monoculture because you're inspiring diversity, you're allowing for diversity, you're, creating opportunity for more things to thrive.
Yeah, giving back to that soil, not just taking and taking and taking.
Right, having a nitrogen fixer in the beans or this, that, and another. I think it's a thing to speak to as far as like stacking forestry together with open spaces that are providing food. Right, like I speak a lot to food forestry and the idea that perennial gardening as opposed to annual gardening is probably the way we should be going. Our existence is no longer questionable on a year-to-year basis. I think we've kind of figured out the incentive modeling behind getting food to lots of corners of this country, at least in America. And how do we fix that in other countries without destroying it with broken incentive models where CEOs take 200, 300, 400% of their average workers' pay, because that's certainly not going with the grain of permaculture and providing an abundance and designing for an abundance. Right? I think it should be very easy for everyone to meet all kinds of different needs. And especially with a pandemic happening, I think that one of those needs is just like social and community based interactions in and of itself. So I appreciate everyone that's here for sure. and
Yep.
enjoy the idea of stacking functions, right? Like we could be doing this while spreading education about permaculture, spreading
Yep.
the imagination about how commons goods can fix things, or whatever
About
it is that your edge is out here.
how food brings us together, and so many facets. Not just cooking it or eating it, but growing it as well, and being in tune with our Mother Earth, and not just thinking that food comes from the grocery store. So
it's interesting what you were speaking about, change the game, as far as the C-level executives essentially putting a tax on the entire system. It will take some time, obviously, but a large Dow treasury could essentially function like a conglomerate production group, but minus the C-level payouts, and it could just stand to reason that you could get large quantities of food production happening in a very stacked way without the same arcane cost structure that we essentially pay for every time we go to the grocery store.
Are you promoting the idea that monocrop is more or less like a problem because of incentives within corporations? Because it was my understanding that in the 1970s, Secretary of Agriculture Earl Butz began really pushing subsidies because there was a major worry about there being inability, particularly with Nixon, about being able to feed all the constituents of the United States. And I think Earl Butz was the Secretary of Agriculture at the time, was famous for having said, to farmers, like, get big or get out, basically follow our program, or, we're not going to support you. And, so they stuck with the program. They did what the government wanted. They, really just pushed like corn, and a few other things, soy and such, to be able to make a lot of products that you find flushing the grocery stores. And you saw Big Food kind of get well behind this with, pushing of more cereals, grain-based things, etc. And, I don't think that the issue lies with payouts. I think that it lies mostly with subsidies. I'm from Texas, and right now there's a big issue with, there was a massive drought that was going on for a lot of the western United States as well as southern United States. That in Texas, East Texas, the largest producer locally largest distributor of cattle within the United States, began liquidating cattle, and they were liquidating their heifers as well, which is a terrible thing. They just didn't have a means of being able to feed them. And so, like, it's very difficult to, as an independent farmer, get a break, especially because all these larger groups, are Tyson, et cetera, are, getting these subsidies in tandem. A lot of meat packing packers, of which there are really just three, take a lot of costs out of the middle. So again, I don't necessarily. I think that the problem lies with the fact that there's, at least in I think the biggest ones. I'm sorry, I'm like jamming a lot of things in here, but I have a lot to say on this matter. I think that there's a lot of issues with the governmental structure of providing subsidies to these larger firms. The meat packing. Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's just a huge problem, in my opinion.
Well, I think what we should really speak to is that it's a game theoretic broken model. Like, you're speaking to the fact that essentially the biggest players with the most sway get the most money because they're churning their own money back to themselves inherently. Like, that's the problem. Like, the incentive structures are broken. Like, the way that it works for big corporations versus the little people who actually run big corporations are two and totally different places and things. Like, again, that's like the speak to localism where, I heard you say, like, oh, it's not the small farmers problem. No, it's not the small farmers problem. It's a cultural problem. It's a design issue. The way that, money gets spent down to you or how you're supported isn't necessarily in coordination with your human success, but rather with a corporate standard of success. And I think that's where we have to go back, and a lot of problems go back and go back and go back. It's like, oh, we're blaming our moms, we're blaming our generation, we're blaming this, we're blaming that. It's like, it's just a design issue. And I
It's a
agree,
design
like, it's
issue.
bad.
It's a design issue, but it's also it's just simply a moral issue that leaders in the food industry are choosing to make. And I'll give a modern example, because you did reference like our past generations and us, you know, uh, looking to point blame and all this and that. And like, again, like Honk was saying, there's so much to talk about here. But for me, one really strong example is Mr. Beast. And so, we all know who Mr. Beast is. He has one of the largest audiences in the world and can essentially do whatever he wants at this point, and he can attract any level of VC funding. And he's literally gone and done that with his ghost kitchens and Beast Burger. But if you look at the Beast Burgers, like, they literally look like gross to me personally. They look like just that quintessential corn-fed, smashed, gross thing. And he could have very clearly made different menu choices. And so one of the conversations that I think will continue to be important is menu development. Menu development, when you're talking on a massive corporate level, really matters and drives the conversation. And so for me, like, we definitely should not dwell on blaming our parents. We should put the responsibility on the people that are making the decisions right now today.
I totally agree with that for sure. And that's part of the problem with like the monocrop situation. Like, it was easier to mass market and mass produce something for our market as opposed to emphasizing localism and decentralization and human individual empowerment, as far as like, oh, we're all here to support this terrible structure that we don't agree with. And that's Moloch. Like, that is the thing that eats our children, is the fact that we cannot shift from this thing that is destroying us because we won't address the design issues. So yes, I totally agree that, for us to fix the corporate food model, we have to say you need to be able to eat muscadines. You need to be able to eat kiwi. You need to be able to eat food that was grown no less than a mile away from wherever it is that you live. Like, let's find a way to make that the emphatic thing that we kind of push, as opposed to massive 10,000 acre farms in the middle of the Midwest that is really shouldn't be that kind of food production regardless, because people don't live there. Right? Like, we're talking about trying to solve, the consumption of carbon-based fuels and all of this. And it's like, well, if you want to fix that, then stop forcing people to work in jobs that are, 50 miles away, or even 10 miles away, or even 1 mile away. But because you live in a city, it takes you 30 minutes in a car that consumes carbon the entire time you're out there. And it's like, all of these little like things that we need to fix are there and prescient and available to be fixed. But yes, fix the local food scale. Yeah.
Well, it's like one of the
It's
problems, is that above 90% of these big giant farms are growing food for cattle that are packed into big feedlots. And, if they had these cattle spread out in, pasture grazing, you're building the soil, you're not stripping it down, you're sequestering carbon instead of adding carbon, and having a positive carbon impact. So it's things like that, like you're saying, that, the whole system, and we're so deep into that to change it on a large scale is just going to take so long and
it'll
so
take
much
decades,
work.
and
Yeah,
it'll take these
it'll take
conversations. But
probably.
I will play devil's advocate a little bit. Um, you know, if you drive across America, you see exactly what we're talking about. You see large soy, corn, wheat, barley, sorghum. You see cow production. Uh, you don't really see chicken production. You don't really see pork production from the side of the road. You predominantly see cow production. And the truth of the matter is that the sanitation and the humane nature of the feedlots, it's not good. But on the other hand, like these areas for the most part are in the middle of nowhere, and it's not. I mean, I think when you're talking about concentrated methane gas and the petroleum necessary to like transport those large distances, yes, that's a separate issue. But I always, generally speaking, believe in technology, and I do think that technology will continue to be one of these things that makes changes. You know, as vehicles become cleaner, as we move towards fusion energy and other types of like spectacular sustainable energy sources, I do think that some of the issues that we face with petroleum will slowly start to fade away. But what Honk was saying, there is some truth to that. Like we really, there's a lot of people that live in this world, and we obviously don't want people to go hungry. I think once you have those conversations, you start to get into bigger conversations about population and all this other stuff. But inherently, without touching on all that, we still have to feed people. And so
Could
I
could
don't
I
think anybody.
offer could I offer this
Yes.
interesting thing that I turn your problem into the solution. So the problem is inherently that we have these giant, massive farms that are doing degenerative work, like work that is destroying the ecosystem. We just have to turn them into the kinds of systems where instead of chickens destroying giant warehouses worth of space, we could be running them in lateral with cows, in lateral with pigs, in lateral with forestry systems that actually do large scale restoration work
Yep.
and return to natural patterns. So yes, I mean yes, I agree with you that technology definitely offers amazing opportunities for us to shift the shift where the problem is. And I think that we could do methane production. I really enjoy, we're at Food Nouns, I really enjoy Korean barbecue, for example. It's beef, it's lots of vegetables, it's probably not great for society or the way that it's built or whatever. But one of the things that I wanted to offer to them, one of the things I wanted to offer to them was to tell them, like, hey, you could be taking your vegetable scraps and putting them in a biodigester, and you could actually run your flame system instead of off of propane, which you probably pay quite a lot of money for. You could actually run it all off of your own produced methane from the scraps and the waste that you're going to produce and throw away anyways. Like, and you're producing soil. That soil can go back out to the farmers who gave them the food in the first place. Like, there's all kinds of solutions that you can constantly see and like develop in your mind once you kind of have this permaculture X Web3 smart contract development kind of imagination, where it's like, oh yeah, the incentives are aligned. It makes sense for us to collaborate. We produce more value. One in one person does not equal two people. One in one person equals 3 to 5 people. Like, you can do so much more work with a handful of people as opposed to trying to go at it alone, necessarily speaking. So yeah, stack functions, turn your problems into your solutions, and use permaculture.
I think that's a great segue into the next thing I wanted to talk about. But well, did you want to say something, Honk?
Yes.
All right. Was that it?
Go Honk, go.
I don't understand the whole idea of Korean barbecue being bad for society. That's a leap. I mean, like, I'm very practical in terms of understanding humans. I used to be like, very autistic and like stubborn about, oh no, you have to. I didn't shop it. I boycotted grocery stores for a full year. You want to talk about somebody who like figured out different means of like toilet paper, things like that. I make my own soap. Like, I make my own deodorant. So like, you want to talk about somebody who's like very, very idealist. Like, I've been there in a very pure way. I buy things from my farmers. I know who I get my stuff from. Now, the whole idea of going to some Korean barbecue place and trying to tell them, I totally advocate for education, but man, are you not going to move the needle. I think you have to do it in bigger ways, and you have to focus on the root of the matter. In terms of like, I think I heard something about, I think I heard something about propane and methane and yada yada. Like, look, man, you want to look at the environmental impact of released carbon insofar as carbon release due to tilling, versus like the impact of cows. Like, go for it. I think that the whole thing about carbon, because I understand physics, is carbon dioxide is more or less kind of like BS. But people say the science is settled, and 95% of people agree. I think that the move towards more of Joel Salatin's sort of push, polyface farms, etc., is totally reasonable at this point in time. The sad matter is that we're not going to be able to swing the pendulum that quickly. There are more people who are catching on, but again, like, it's very demotivating being a farmer. It's incredibly hard work, relatively speaking.
Yeah, you ain't.
Yeah. And then you're at the hands of vendors, butchers, packers, etc. If you want to sell your wares, you can go to farmers markets. Unless you're in like a kitschy city like SF or Austin or like some of these other ones, like it'll be difficult, or like Denver, it's more difficult to really get people to care and engage because they're just looking at price. They don't necessarily care what happened to the animals. That's out of sight, out of mind, or the sort of like things that they put in animals, antidepressants, etc., which are all horrifying.
Yeah, Musashi messaged me. He said he totally agrees with you on this one. Some great points raised there, huh?
Yeah, Honk, it's really refreshing to hear you have such a deep knowledge of this, and I really hope that you come back and continue to talk about this. I have all sorts of questions that I would like to ask you. I won't do that this evening, but it really, I think that the pendulum has to move in the right direction. It can't move in the wrong direction, and it would be egotistical of us to say that we're going to save the world, but it would also be ludicrous of us to not make an attempt to move the needle in some direction forward. And I do think that, while we are able and legally allowed to have these conversations with freedom of speech and all of this, I do think that it's important to kind of compartmentalize the conversations a little bit to make sure that we don't get depressed even within our own small little ecosystem, that we don't get overwhelmed by it. So I really appreciate the balanced nature to the conversation, specifically around things like Korean barbecue and stuff like that. For me, it goes back to like menu decisions. I mean, one of the things that really frustrates me a lot is like you'll be driving down a road and you'll see a strip mall and all the other fast food restaurants around, they're not really putting out a lot of like smoke. And then all of a sudden you see this one barbecue restaurant. It's usually like Hawaiian barbecue or a Korean barbecue. And it's like a fucking chimney out of the top of the restaurant. And I just, to this day, don't understand how these restaurants are allowed to do that. Perhaps maybe that's what was being referenced.
Well, I don't know. I take everything from a very like light-hearted kind of stance because we are ephemeral and this is all temporary and we're all gonna die anyways. So, the heat death of the universe comes for us all. But in the meantime, I totally agree. Let's do something cool and funky and like save the planet somehow. I don't know. Like the more you can make it kind of the hip and the cool thing to be successful independently because of your community connection through Web3 or crypto, or you have your little micro cults that you bought some land with and did something funky with, like whatever it is, like I want people to, listen and pay attention and research and, find some kind of truth out here in the world. And the closer you can get with nature, I think the closer you get with like what the real honest part of reality is,
How many Fish concerts have you gone to, Change?
3, maybe, if I'm being honest.
I would have thought higher, but pretty good.
Lots of festivals though, but I think those are two different spaces.
They most definitely are.
I did want to say we are in the POAP window, and that is exciting.
Would you like to send us off on that?
Yes, everyone, the POAP window time has arrived. And so just pull out your POAP app if you don't know what that is. You can go to poap.xyz and set up an account if you don't have one. But for the secret word, hit the plus sign, secret word, and the secret word is Nouns Bloom. All lowercase, one word. Nouns Bloom.
Awesome. Thank you much, dude. Worked for me.
Works for me. Great job, Ryan.
Awesome. Appreciate that.
Hi, everybody. It's No Dynamo. I just wanted to ask a question real quick. We've been talking about big farms and, the overall permaculture structure. Do you have any advice for small gardeners or people who have gardens in their front yard like I do? I've been trying to use heirloom plants. You talked about like eating things like I grow ground cherries, which are really cool, southern tasty plants, and some
Super
cherry
cool, yeah.
so what is your advice for people who are trying to learn permaculture as individuals out here in the world?
I think it's good to expose yourself to the internet and all of its incredible resources of information. I would go for Jeff Lawton and potentially his teacher Bill Mollison as well, like those two specifically. I think there are probably lots of female forward permaculturalists that are out there that would be great to go out for. Morag Gamble. There's like Back to Eden Gardening with a specific lady who is escaping my thought form right now. But I think that Musashi, if he could request and come up here, I know he sometimes struggles. I would love to chat with him. I think he's got a lot more on the ground, in the hands and dirt kind of experience than I do. I've definitely been exploring permaculture for 10 plus years, but have not really had my own land or my own time and independence to expose myself too deeply with the nitty gritty of doing permaculture. But I think that to empower yourself as a small gardener, I think that a very interesting aspect for you to check out is Korean natural farming. And it's all about like fermentation. So it kind of goes with nouns specifically because it's like all about food creation and how to make food last longer or turn food into one source into another kind of resource. Like nothing in this world is trash. And if you ever consider that anything that you do is trash, then you have broken some methodology of permaculture where everything is technically a reusable resource, and if it's not, you probably shouldn't be using it in the first place. So I think that would be my
Essentially, that is
suggestion.
kind of like the end of the season here, and so composting the things that need to get cut down, and organizing, and and leaving what needs to be left, on the beds, and trying to understand it from that perspective, because the impulses to, as you said in the beginning, is the perennial, or I don't know, or the annual, like just, okay, clear it all out, and call the city to pick up the trash, the yard pickup, and then start all over again next year. But they're right now at this point in the season, at the end of the harvest, figuring that out is an interesting thing as someone who's fairly new to this world. So thanks for those names. I wrote them down and I will take a look.
No, I just shared to the top tweet that I just tweeted out with a really cool website with resources to learn about permaculture and homesteading. It's it's got a really great user experience. Very very user friendly and more geared towards people that are just learning. So give that website, check that out, give it a follow.
Oh,
Yeah,
I will.
Hermes.com
Thanks
is
so much. I really appreciate. I appreciate the big talk about the the larger problems, but also actually trying to produce yield in my front yard for the first time in my life. Is instead of having a lawn, it has been an interesting experience, and trying to learn is fascinating. And I, being part of Food Nouns now and everything that we're doing here, we want to encourage people to do that as well. We want to solve some of the big problems, but I think that some of the big problems get solved one person or group of people at a time.
I think it's super awesome that you're doing that, and more power to you. I wish you the best of luck. So yeah, KNF is also, or Korean National Farming is also a lot about composting. Like that'll probably be one of the first things that you'll kind of run into is a funky kind of composting system and microbiology. There's another microbiologist that's kind of like rubbing up against KNF and is kind of against it or whatever. Like it's like, different. I don't know if you've ever heard of biodynamic farming, but that's like another thing that's kind of like wooey kind of feeling, like spiritual farming. Some might say, like, I don't know. I think that there's a lot of truth to everything that's out there, and like deciphering what it is really comes from knowing all of the edges. Right? Like if you look at a cone, like an ice cream cone, from the front it creates a shadow of a circle, but from the side it creates the shadow of a diamond or a triangle. So you have to look at everything. You have to look at things from lots of different angles. So I just look up in information. Farming is awesome, and you can do KNF. You can do back to Eden gardening, where you cover up your space with straw and cardboard. Like, are you establishing gardening beds? Are you building soil? Like, really, KNF is about building soil and very strong microbial
I would like to
communities.
build soil personally, and I don't want it to be all about me. I just had the general question, but yeah, I live in Asheville, North Carolina, which is great climate, though my soil is very clay-like, and we did bring in some extra topsoil, and so yes, I'd like to build soil. I have great light, and I where I live is called Spring Cove Terrace. I have great water. I do live at the top of the mountain, and I get the natural runoff. Just because of that's where my property is. So, I have a natural stream. So it just turned out that it was a good place to do it. And I had support from some friends, and it's been a beautiful experience to do it for the first time. But I just am learning. I'm learning so much and listening. And yeah, so I want to build soil. Yeah,
that's the best way to do it, is to learn and listen. And then it's like with anything else, whether it's cooking a hamburger or putting in a garden or trying to fix your own car or something. At some point in time you'll hit this point where you have enough confidence to essentially fail and to go try something and see how it's going to work. And so I think that some of the things that Food Nouns just conceptually has done right is saying, education and messaging is such an important piece of this. If you look at some of the conversations from earlier when Honk was in the room, we of course want to affect things on a large level. We of course want to be here for those conversations. We want to be educated. I think that's exactly what we're doing now. We're educating ourselves as a group so that we can continue to learn and grow and speak to things correctly and hear all the different sides of it. But we would be remiss, and we would be really just not on track if we spent years focusing on these big picture items without also pushing ourselves to do things on a micro and a local level because of the fact that, moving the needle at all is moving the needle. And so I really appreciate the variety of the scope in the conversation. And I think Nono is a good example of, someone who is learning to garden, really, and within that, finding the joy that brings them, as well as being able to, make your property have better soil, make, yourself eat healthier and more nutrient dense fruits and vegetables. So all in all, I think it really will be, important for us to really focus on the individual.
For a small space, I did actually for the first time, just out of luck, in the where my property is, have a great yield. I ate well all summer. I still have squashes and things coming in for the fall, and I gave away tons that I couldn't eat because I live alone, So, so yeah, creating yield and creating things in personal spaces is important, and learning is important, and and just having the joy of it. There's nothing more empowering than growing a tomato. Like you feel like you're a genius, but but the permaculture part of it is really important. Would love to talk more about it and keep this going in Food Nouns.
Yeah, this is definitely
Creating and sharing in abundance.
Yeah, it's all abundance. There's an abundance of conversations to be had, and I think that it's really special. And I feel lucky that the Noun Square has we've folded this into their Soapbox program. I think that will just help proliferate the thoughts. I want to also say hello to Meta Ramen down there. I see you, Meta Ramen. Meta Ramen was one of the first ramen NFT projects that came out, around the 2021 time period. And so that for me is just another clear example of everyone here showing up and making this an important part of their evening and taking a chance to be here for each other. We've now brought in a new person, and now we've now created a stage for them to share and to learn and be part of the conversation. And so it's a week by week thing. It's a day by day thing. And I really hope that everyone leaves these spaces feeling that and really feeling the individual joy that, we are creating for each other here. So welcome, Meta Ramen. Thank you for coming.
And hey, Shefo, we've got only 1 minute left. And speaking of week by week and day by day, I'm going to put on my executive producer hat and tell you what's coming up for Food Nouns, if you don't mind. So tomorrow night on the Noun Square Soapbox is our FOODNOUN O Clock, where we talk about all things nounish and food on the soapbox. And we have special.
Sorry. Yep. Go ahead.
We have a special guest
tonight. Our guest is in the room this evening. Everyone should
go down. I didn't know that.
So
give a shout out.
Tomorrow night we're going to be interviewing Wine by Nouns. And Unit, I hope I'm saying that right, Unit. But we would like to be a space to show off different types of food props and beverage props, basically anything that has to do with food and beverage. We would like to be one of the spaces to really do some great informed interviews. So tomorrow's show is with one of the newest props in the ecosystem, and we'll hear more about that. But we should pretty shortly have some nounish wine, folks, and it's very freaking exciting.
Yeah, we're really excited. That space is tomorrow night at 8 p.m. FOODNOUN O Clock. And then on Thursday, we have Chef Ish, which is on the FOODNOUN O Clock. It's not on Noun Square. It's on our page, FOODNOUN O Clock. And it is a show where we talk to chefs about all things food. One of the things that we are interested in is food production and new chef ideas and everything that's going on in the kitchen. Teaching people to cook is also important, even in terms of permaculture. It's much easier to go buy the cereal that Nixon made than cook yourself. A lot of people don't know what to do with a garden and how to break down produce. And so talking to chefs is really important for us. And then Friday night, we have Food Noun Fridays, also at 8 p.m. on Food Noun O Clock with our friend Art is My Weapon. And we talk about health and wellness and food and wellness in the food industry. Saturday night at 8 p.m. is Contest Toshi's Contest Extravaganza, where you can win actual USD. There's a contest every 5 minutes, and it is one of our pillars to fund and promote fun, because food is fun, and we will be there Saturday night with Contest Toshi. And then Sunday night is actually my show, Food for Thought, where we talk about innovation in food. And I'd love to have some of you guys come to talk about that as well. So it's innovation, technology, and art, the three things that make up our DAO. People buy NFTs, which is art. It's based on technology, and we're all about innovation in the food industry. And then Monday nights is another fun show, which also features me, because I like to bake, and it's milk and cookies. And that is one that we talk about all things Nounish, and we bake live on Twitter. Every week, the recipe is posted. You can bake live with us, and then you win a POAP with the recipe, and you still have a week to make it and get the POAP, and there are special prizes if you bake along with us. So that's what we have in store at Food Noun O Clock.
So everyone can still make the Nouner Spritzen?
Yes.
Nouner Spritzen. Yeah, the Nouner Spritzen is going to become a real thing.
I think Nouner Spritzen is actually year-round now, I think I'm going to say. Yeah.
That is a reference. That's way alpha. Last night, in honor of Sheffo and Contest Toshi being at ETH Berlin and then now in Munich, we baked a German cookie, a Spritz cookie, which requires a cookie press thingamajig to make the shapes. It's normally done at Christmas time, but we just made them anyway for the tie-in to the merge and ETH Berlin and all of that. And during the show, Prof asked if there was a way to make the discs, to make the little noggles as a cookie for the cookie press, because she has access to laser printers at the college where she works. And I said, yes, we're going to make that and make very alpha. I named it Nouner Spritzen, which is not a real word, but it's coming up very soon to a noun space near you, Nouner Spritzen.
Can you imagine all the cookies that you guys are going to inspire over the weeks? Honestly, cookies are one of these things that bring a lot of joy to people, and a lot of times it's one of the first things that they experiment when they're starting to learn to bake. And I really, really enjoy the format that you and Prof have come up with, giving people an opportunity to hear you baking live and hearing little tips and tricks during the process, and then having an entire week to bake themselves. I really think that this could take off, and you guys should be very proud
I
of
love the
yourselves for that.
innovation of that. The POAP is your recipe card.
I was just going to say that is so cool. I mean, even though the recipe it's only one part noun, one part spritzen, but it's still so cool. You can just click the POAP and it says the recipe's right there.
Okay, well, Ryan is in love with the Noun Spritzen idea. He said he was actually crying in his face. He was laughing so hard. So if you want to have some fun, come to Milk and Cookies. If you want to have or contest Toshi, if you want to talk about gardens, come to Bloomz in Season. If you want to learn kitchen tricks and tips, come to Chefish. If you want to understand the relationship with nouns and food, come to FOODNOUN O Clock. We've got something for everyone at Food Nouns. Join our Discord. Come in, participate. We love nouns and we love food nouns, and we're really grateful that you're here. And thanks so much.
Awesome. Thanks a lot.
Great job, No.
Yeah, I just want to touch back on what Sheffo said. Thanking the Noun Square for having a Bloomz in Season on the soapbox and hosting. And, we're looking forward to seeing everybody next week. I think we're going to get things wrapped up here. Is there anything else anybody wants to add before we send her off?
Hopefully next week we can start experimenting with our seed giveaway, because you and Andrew are sitting on a mountain of seeds, and even at a minimum, it may not be the season for everybody in the United States, but I'm pretty sure we can send seeds around the world. We'll have to get some down to Ben Bodie down there, see what he can grow, see what kind of gardener Ben is in the Southern Hemisphere. But I can't wait to...
on the first space, Ben won the seed pack, and it should be on the way to him right now.
That's super cool.
Yes, correct. Yep, that was great. And he jumped in right at the end too and won. So that was awesome. But yes, Sheffo, we will be having some seed giveaways. We'll make sure to have a couple packs of seeds to give away next week. So I will make sure to coordinate with Andrew this week and get that all squared away for everybody. I'm excited about that. Anything else that we want to touch on? Just finding a song here.
Thank you guys so much for inviting me again. This was a blast. I'm glad I could shill permaculture to all of you, and I hope you find a way to turn your problems into solutions and use permaculture in your daily life.
You speak very well about it, and you're welcome to come back. That was really excellent. Thank you for sharing your knowledge.
Yes, change the game. Thank you again for being here, man. Hopefully we can get you back every week, so I'll be in your DMs.
Hey, thank you. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thanks, you guys. It was a really good conversation. Again, I'm looking forward to seeing these grow.
Alrighty, guys. Thanks for coming, everybody. Have a great night. Tune in next week. We're going to have seed giveaways, co-apps, all kinds of stuff. Thanks again, guys. Such a changeable form this very first year. This one's for Honk. It's not fish, but pretty close.
We're going to be bugging Honk a lot, I think. This is going to be great.
I'll get a fish opening song tomorrow or next week for Honk. It doesn't want to look like a fool, that's a jail without gear.
Stay spicy, everyone.
All right, guys. Take it easy, everybody.